right, looks like we got everyone here. All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Anyone? Great. All right, well, welcome panelists and everyone in the audience. Thanks for being here for this Epic's election panel. Just a quick intro from me. I'm Connor. You may recognize me as the recap podcast guy or from previous panels, and I'm going to be moderating today's panel again. The format's the same. For some questions, I'm going to individually and randomly call on each of you to respond so that everyone has a chance to answer. And for others, I'm going to be opening the floor for a debate-style discussion where anyone can chime in. Once again, we ask that you please keep your answers to under a minute since we have 10 candidates here and a bunch of questions to get through. So if you're going over time, you're going to hear this sound. And that means it's time for closing thoughts on that question. So I guess we can go ahead and kick it off. As usual, we're going to start with introductions from each of you. Please introduce yourself and give a brief statement on what unique experiences or views you would bring to the Spartan Council. And Adam, we'll hear from you first.
Cool. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
So I'm Adam. Many of you know me for writing ridiculously long threads on Twitter. I've been in the space since 2013, where I worked at a Bitcoin exchange. I've led growth and BD for a number of tech startups, and most recently been an active investor in the space and a contributor for Yearn. For Synthetix, I think there's a few things in my platform that are key to where I would want to help take it. First big one is more radical transparency. The community should be aware of and involved in every single decision. Then I'd also push to lower the C ratio limits with rewards that are scaled based on that C ratio. Make sure we promote better behavior. And then really push on partnerships for listing our synthetic assets, which are way under leveraged, and making sure that we bolster B3 on mainnet as well, both in keeping the current SUSD token and not isolating ourselves to a small TLD market.
Great, Adam. Thank you and welcome. Ksett, your introduction, please.
Hey guys, I'm Ksett. I'm currently on the Spartan Council, and I'm also a contributor at Buyer Finance, working in their partnerships and integrations department. I guess for unique experiences, I come from options trading and futures trading in C5 prior to joining Lyra. I also have a lot of now experience with a bunch of different protocols and programs to try to promote liquidity. I think as far as promoting Synthetix and their future, I am not quite in the camp of wanting to lower the C ratio, but definitely active risk management and encouraging good staking behavior is going to be one of the big keys, I think, going forward to avoid any downward spiral pressure.
Great. Thank you, Ksett, and welcome back. Ethernaut, your introduction, please.
Hey, yeah, I've been a software developer for the last 15 years or so, being a smart contract dev for the last 5 years, and Synthetix CC for the last 2 years and a bit. I've been on the council on the last epoch, and I would like to continue this epoch, acting as a technical liaison between the Spartan Council, the CCs, and the CCCs. And I think the core thing I want to achieve is a transition to B3 in the upcoming epoch.
Thank you, Ethernaut. Afif, your introduction, please.
Yeah, thanks for hosting. As always, these panels are always really fun. So I think most people know me. I've been a core contributor with Synthetix for about 1.5 years now. I've been on the Spartan Council for, I think, 4 epochs now. And before joining Synthetix, I was doing a PhD in biophysics in Baltimore. And yeah, I'm contemplating whether or not, if I was elected this epoch, it might be my last epoch on the Spartan Council, because some of the goals that I had when I initially ran are pretty close to coming to fruition now. I think I've said on every panel, what I want to see finally get done is a good purpose implementation and production, and we're very close to that now at V2, and then seeing Synthetix V3 ship, and both of these are rapidly becoming a reality. So I think like those are the main, like I'll save the stances on everything else for the questions. I'm sure we'll get into some fun discussions, but those are like my main goals for this epic. I think both of those will be shipped and it should be really exciting to see. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Troy, your introduction, please.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Cool, hello. Okay, cool. Thanks. Hi. Yeah, thanks for hosting as well. My name's Troy. I'm a CC on the Quenta team. So I contribute on sort of like data infrastructure stuff, like our backend, front end development, and more recently a bit of work on kind of like UX and product management as well. Prior to Quenta, I worked in data science and analytics, so I was focused on kind of growth and product, and did some consulting, like analytics consulting as well. Which means I spent a lot of time researching kind of like good metrics and KPIs, how to plan and develop like tests and experiments to grow products, like acquire new users. I think really strategically about like product market fit. So, and before that, I studied kind of like statistics, actuarial science, and like quantitative finance things in school. So yeah, I have this kind of like varied experience where I spent a lot of time doing that, but I've sort of moved over and spent a lot more time doing development on the Quenta side. But I think all of these things together have kind of like built my curiosity about how to build products in DeFi or crypto, because they're the user base is much different. So yeah, as a member of Spartan Council, I think I can help identify and fix some problems there, like how we track people, or how we track like users and usage on the protocol itself, and use that to help sort of both inform growth but also like mitigate risk. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Troy. Burt, your introduction.
Hey guys, my name's Burt. You may know me from right here. I was on the Spartan Council last epic. Longtime Synthetix community member and poster in the Discord. I'm also at Quenta, focusing on marketing and community. And I think the main two skills that I bring to this role are my focus on the trading experience. I am by both hobby and as a on and off as a living, a degenerate trader, and have a 25x position open right now. So I feel like I have a good understanding of what the end user wants and needs, and would also like to focus on the experience of the community interacting with governance. I think during the last epic, there were some successes and then some not so great successes. But I think one of the things I'm most proud of is to see that we listed a new asset that was actually presented by a community member, and so I think that that really improves the trading experience, and it really shows that we're getting community members to engage with governance, which is an important part of having people own this platform and not just passively use it. So those are my priorities this epic, and I'm excited to see perps really shine in the coming months. Hopefully we get some great improvements there. Thank you.
Thank you, Burt. Welcome back. Darius, your introduction, please.
Hey guys, and thank you for hosting. So I might be a new CC on this block. My background is EE, electrical engineering and computer architectures. I worked in the past on radar systems, and then did a long tenure in quantitative finance, working on risk management, derivatives, and global macro at large hedge funds in New York. I've been in the crypto space for years, basically X-Consensus. I followed Heaven back in the day, a core contributor since 2021. Recently, I've been focusing on the debt pool analytics, funding rate for perpetuals, and risk in general. As far as unique perspectives, I have a risk background, so I would focus and push forward the risk the protocol risk, which would mean dead pool analytics, and bringing transparency or more transparency to the different mechanisms that we implement and improve them as well as market fit, which means products, integrations, and that leads to revenues. Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. TerraBellus, your introduction, please.
Hello, everybody. This is TerraBellus. I've been a long-time community member at Synthetix since about early 2020, and I joined in DGen trading and participated there for a long while before joining the Spartan Council for one epoch, January of this year, and then rejoining again at the beginning of this last epoch. In terms of what I bring to, or would bring to the Spartan Council and hope to continue bringing to the Spartan Council is a deep concern for maintaining high quality governance through adapting meta governance in a way that is optimized for the protocol and the state that it is in. In terms of unique experiences, my professional background is an academic in social sciences, having a PhD. This has kind of afforded me an opportunity to do observational research and see how people in the real world act together to ensure their best interests, which is something that I think I can be usefully applying to how the various parts of the governance system work together in the interests of the stakers.
Thank you, Tara. Andrea, your introduction, please.
Hi there, everyone. Glad to be here. Maybe for many, it's the first time you see me. I'm the group, the 300 group member. I'm a product manager in the Web3 space, and I'm an active user. And I studied blockchain technology since by myself. I studied it since the 2015, and I have a research experience on blockchain in general, and then on Ethereum, smart contract, DeFi. And writing in the early 2021 a thesis about DAO as a corporate decentralized governance model. So I studied a lot, I worked a lot, and I always participate as an outsider to the Synthetix community. But this year I decided to get more and more active, involved, creating, let's say, the Synthetix Italia page and community. And I decided to nominate Synthetix Italia as a Spartan Council member with the idea to create a sub-DAO for Synthetix. And today I'm here as a representative of Synthetix Italia. I love the concept of DAO, and I believe that Synthetix Italia experiment should be done, and is needed in order to be able to let's try to scale the DAO of Synthetix by creating this, let's say, this new next layer of decentralization. So yeah, this is it. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. And finally, Bojan, your introduction, please.
Hey guys, Bojan here. For those that don't know me, I've been a community member since like early Haven days, so that's like 4 years now. During that time, I wrote a couple of SAPs. I've been a member of Spartan Council for 3 books, I believe. And during those years, I think I built a solid understanding of how protocol works and how different parts fit together. So I hope I can use that knowledge and instincts to provide valuable feedback for our future design choices and products, that stuff. Thanks.
Thank you, Bojan. Great to have you back. All right, moving on to the next question. This one's an open-ended question on non-SNX collateral in V3. This question is for individual response. What do you think this would look like? what collateral types might work, and how would inflation and fees factor in? TerraBellus, we'll hear from you first on this one.
So the current blueprint for multi-collateral Synthetix entails initially the Spartan Council enabling various vaults that contain pre-approved types of collateral. In terms of what collateral is suitable for this role, ideally, we're looking at those that don't have volatility, or as small an amount of volatility as possible, so that we can maintain the health of the system. In terms of how inflation and fees factor in, that's an open-ended question at the moment, given we have a draft SIP that is proposing the notion of actually concluding the inflation as it stands. But in terms of fees and inflation, I suppose what you would have is you'd have risk-adjusted levels of both, so that you could choose to produce SNX USD in the vaults through which you kind of wanted to marry your risk tolerance with the risk of those assets. So ideally, we're going to be pretty open-ended in terms of what assets can be used in V3. But at least initially, I think there's going to be a kind of cautious approach that allows us to gradually build out the available collateral options in the interests of stability.
Great, thank you, Tara. Adam, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, so I think the kind of non-SNX collateral is going to be key for us, including, as we found out yesterday, from an evolving regulatory point of view, and not being the next Luna and made illegal in Burgerland. But it's also something that we probably don't have to incentivize. We know there's tremendous amount of demand for borrowing against diverse assets, and we see that with how lucrative lending markets get to be at times of strain in this market. So I think starting off, there's probably a lot of the majors that have fairly low volatility that we can have dedicated vaults for, you know, your WBTC and ETH and things like that. But I also think the real magic of Synthetix that we under leverage right now comes from our tokenized synths. Everybody else is doing these perpetuals and synths as, you know, internal ledgers, and us having the tokenized versions allows us to kind of make these a central pillar for other protocols. And we should be kind of using that ourselves as the first guinea pigs. And so being able to have vaults where, you know, if somebody wants to borrow SUSD against S euro and kind of take on that Forex trade, they have the opportunity to do so. You know, the Forex market is the largest in the world with $6.6 trillion a day in OTC desk turnover. Very little of it is on chain because there aren't reliable ways to do so. And I think there should be a big push. I know we have Oracle problems to solve, but I think there should be a big push from us in demonstrating the ability to use tokenized synths in other platforms, because I think we fail if we build a product rather than a protocol that others are using.
Great points, Adam. Thank you for that response. Afif, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, it's a good question and particularly relevant now. There's a lot of different angles to consider from, but just to try to make the most narrow answer to the question as possible, like, yes, I absolutely see it playing a central role in V3. I think probably the only collateral that really makes sense is in terms of decentralization and liquidity would be ETH. So I think we would, as a community, we would probably want to be making an accelerated push to attract ETH to the protocol. I think the credit aspect of it, like, is there, but like we do have like free loans basically on ETH right now, and it's you know, marketing things aside, it's generally still hard to pull in ETH collateral that's willing to mint and take these positions. So I think it's kind of like it needs a two-pronged approach of like continuously invigorating like and enriching the liquidity of SUSD, and then also attracting ETH collateral and to actually participate in, like, you know, what is effectively LPing through the debt pool in various segmented markets in V3. And like ideally just the yield from that alone will be enough to attract ETH collateral. It's like kind of a unique use case where you could just put ETH in, and you have some market that you delegate credit to, and it does stuff on your behalf and generates yield for you. Like that's not really something that exists in any other protocol. This like credit-based LPing strategy. So I think it might be good to reserve some inflation to onboard a critical mass of ETH liquidity. But yeah, like I think the roadmap in V3 should be kind of like whatever gets us to a predominantly ETH-backed debt pool as quickly as possible is what we should go for. So yeah, I think that'd be my answer to it.
Great, thank you. Ethernaut, your views on non-SNX collateral in V3.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said so far in terms of the collateral. I think we should remove any technical obstacles regarding what we choose to use as collateral. And as well, I think you asked this in the initial question. Do the same with the ability to distribute inflation and rewards, right? So I really like how the V3 design allows not only any type of collateral to be included in the system without technical overhead, but as well to be able to choose to have like buckets for rewards to be distributed between pools and markets. So I think mostly my comment would be about the technical ability to do that in a seamless way.
Great, thank you. Andrea, your response to this question, please.
Yeah, I think we are more or less everyone synchronized on that. And I think that it's really necessary to implement other assets as a collateral in order to scale up as was the supply liquidity, the synths in general liquidity, but it's necessary not to undermine the solidity and decentralization of the synths as was the first, of course. Furthermore, I think it will be also helpful in the case of the current stablecoin bill in the Fed Congress that is telling that the stablecoin backed only by the issuer assets would be like I don't know, like blacklisted, something like that. And a great starting point is Ethereum, of course, ETH, since it's the most decentralized asset. And I really like the idea of the vault share presented in the V3 pitch, providing a dynamic fees distribution model. And I think that the implementation of this vault system is a good factor to keep the protocol healthy. But I still believe that the assets to be implemented as a collateral, must be very well thought and decided by the DAO after carefully studies, So, yeah, this is all. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Darius, your thoughts on this question, please.
Sure. So I also agree with what has been said prior to. A new collateral is much needed for growth of USD. It has to be a high quality asset with lower vol and higher market cap and liquidity that's available on DEXs. In regards to inflation, I think it might not be necessary due to the quoted borrowing demand, but it depends on the asset itself. Ethereum would be a great addition here. I agree with that notion. But I think the yields generated might need to compete with staking on Beacon Chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. Ksett?
Sort of agree with most everybody here that right now ETH seems like the most scalable potential collateral type. that we can use. I do think it's great that we'll have the ability for multiple types of collateral. Like down the road, maybe it would make sense to have, different LP positions or even staked collateral as collateral for backing SUSD, but probably not out the gates. As far as stables go, would love stables to make sure that it's scalable in a stable peg, but at this point, it's definitely not seeming to be worth the regulatory risk that comes with it. So I would say definitely ETH is the most scalable.
Thank you, Ksett. Troy?
Yeah, to nobody's surprise, I guess I also agree with a lot of what has been said. I think there's just this requirement when people come to participate at Synthetix that they buy SNX, which some people here may like, but in terms of actually being able to scale the amount of debt and volume and fees that the system can build, it's kind of clear we need another kind of collateral. And I think and again agree that native ETH is obviously the safest, and I wouldn't feel good about really putting anything in other than ETH, especially from the very beginning. But yeah, centralized stablecoins seem like a massive risk to the protocol. And then the last thing I'd say is kind of on Darius's point, this does even kind of compete with ETH staking yields. So while I think it's great for us all to say oh yes, I'd love to put ETH as collateral into the as an option, there's still the idea that we have to attract and incentivize people to do so. So there also needs to be some kind of incentive or reason for people to do so. But yeah, again, agree with most everything said here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Troy. Burt, your response, please.
Yeah, so pretty unsurprisingly, I'm going to agree with the idea that we need non-SNX collateral and that we need to have probably ETH collateral as something that's going to be relatively low risk. And I think, sorry, can you hear me better? Good. All right. So I think one of the big concerns that SNX stakers are going to have here is what benefit do we have to holding SNX, right? And so you have to direct at least some of the fee revenue toward people who are going to risk their ETH. But I think we still need to make sure that there is a percentage of fees going back to SNX stakers specifically to make holding SNX attractive, and to make sure that SNX stakers are able to control where these funds are going via governance. But I definitely think that yes, the priority needs to be scaling. Right now, we have SUSD has been above peg now for months, and I think basically anybody coming in trying to trade and use our products knows that that's a bit of friction to not be able to get in and out of our stablecoin at $1, and there's really no other way other than using non-SNX collateral to scale this and actually grow our products. So I'm going to say yes, definitely, for that reason.
Thank you, Burt. And Bojan, your thoughts?
Well, I agree with other participants that risk-bearing ETH collateral is probably going to be most important one. But the one I'm probably personally more interested in is LP tokens as collateral, and mainly SNX LP token. I think we have this long-standing problem of SNX liquidity, And I think that allowing LP tokens as collaterals, we can finally solve that problem. For example, we can have like LP token that is 80% SNX and 20% ETH. And that way we can still use SNX like collateral to issue synths against, but at the same time it will be liquid. So, you know, a lot of people are complaining about high C ratio, but the way I see it, to safely reduce that number, we need basically two things, like a robust liquidation mechanism, which we already have, and liquid, and I should say like high SNX liquidity. And by allowing LP tokens to be used as collateral, I think we can solve also that part, so we can safely like reduce C ratio for SNX.
Great, thank you, Bojan. All right, moving on to the next question. Another question for individual response, but sort of open-ended on the topic of inflation. What do you think it should be in the short and long term, and what should it be used for? Troy, we'll hear from you first on this one.
Yeah, so like I actually really appreciate Gain's perspective on sort of like you know, decreasing inflation significantly and relying on fees. I think right now is like it is a difficult time, like looking at things like fee revenue coming from atomic swaps. I think it's you know, it's not as consistent as I think you would want if you said you wanted to completely like sustain the protocol on no inflation. And like it could easily impact staking ratios a lot. So like my perspective is like, you know, yes, like decreasing inflation significantly can be a really good tool for seeing that. But like honestly, I believe that it would almost certainly require some like correction in the future. If I don't think personally that it would just be like kill inflation to zero and then it stays there absolutely forever and nothing goes wrong and the Spartan Council makes no more decisions on that. So so like in the short term, I'm you know, like interested in seeing how this plays out. If the council were to decide that, especially before the next epoch. But personally, I think it's an interesting experiment. I think long term, inflation should never be higher than kind of like the protocol needs to support itself. And that using inflation as this kind of lever to drive incentives for people is like very kind of unsustainable in the very long term. So I think inflation should be used for kind of like protocol sort of like robustness and sustainability rather than sort of like incentivization and yeah, like a huge high staking reward like we have today.
Great, thank you, Troy. Darius, your thoughts on inflation?
So inflation, stating the obvious, low inflation is or zero inflation is much better than high inflation. It's one mechanism needed to bootstrap new markets, which might be relevant in V3, maybe not. That's still TBD. Personally, I like the idea of inflation going to zero, especially as revenues increase and optimally replace the contribution to yield in staking. Let's not forget that inflation can also go negative, which would imply a burn, but that's way too early to talk about that. One issue that you raised before when the inflation goes to zero is that it has implications for changing the characteristics of debt stakers. This is due to decreasing the duration of their locked tokens. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I can also talk about the increase of float. Higher inflation basically increases the float and volatility of the SNX when it comes to trading. And I would also lastly state that stability of the staking yield is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. Andrea?
Okay. Let's say I like a lot, and I'm a strong fan of the need to stop this crazy inflation. And at the same time, I think that just as Synthetix needed the inflation for bootstrapping the actually infrastructure, we will need the inflation in order to bootstrap the V3. So let's say, especially in the first phase, in order to test and in order to see if is for the multi-collateral, of course, it's very important to see if is scalable. We will need a bit of inflation, and for in order to incentivize this collateral. To say now where the inflation should be used is a bit, a leap, and however, it will be important for development, both within and outside the core team member. I mean, and yeah, in summary, I think we should stop the inflation at 300 million as proposed in this Synthetix improvement proposal, but of course use the inflation in order to grow the ecosystem in the future. And yeah, the first step will be, of course, use a bit of inflation in the V3. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. Bojan, your response?
Yeah, short-term inflation. Well, I think our products are not quite ready to support zero inflation. I think there needs to be done like other more stuff, perhaps V2, direct integration. I would like to see like consistent volumes there. When it comes to long-term inflation, I don't know. I would be okay with anything between 0 and some low single digit, like 3 or 4%.
Great, thank you, Ksett.
I'm happy to see the inflation go to 0 long term. Definitely think that that's needed. As far as short term, I have been pretty happy with the plan to gradually reduce it. I think reducing for stakers and then using some inflation for integrations right now and to get to V3 is great, but definitely can't keep it going forever. So I think that at some point, over a longer time frame than the 10 weeks that was initially proposed, I would definitely like to see it go to 0.
Thank you, Ksett. Burt, your response, please.
Yeah. Hey guys. Am I coming through a little clearer now? I changed my mic settings.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot better.
Great. Okay. So, inflation, I have some pretty strong feelings on. I understand that this hyperinflation scenario has left people with a little bit of a desire to see it come down and maybe even go to 0. I personally don't think that going to 0 is a great idea, even short term. And part of the reason I'm really against going to 0 short term is because, as some of the other panelists pointed out, we still do have some behavior we might want to bootstrap in the future, especially as we launch V3. And I think it's going to be really difficult if we set this line where we say inflation is stopping at 300 million and we stop it there. I think it's going to be much harder to restart it than it would be to just find a sane and reasonable place to kind of have inflation going in the background. And I think there are things we can do even sooner than V3. I know we've talked a little bit in the past about about using inflation as incentives for trading. And there's been some kind of reasonable pushback to that, with the idea that our perps product is not really prime time ready, and perhaps would be in a much better spot after the release of perps v2 to incentivize something like this. And there might be other sources to use as some sort of incentive. But I think in general, like, the way you have to consider inflation is that this is money that is being taken equally. It is a cost that is being shared equally by all synthetic stakers. And so it's just like a really elegant way to incentivize behavior that's going to benefit all of us equally. And I think this can be used to great impact to incentivize behavior like putting money in vaults or trading on the platform. It's a great way to get people in the door with Synthetix. If you haven't bought Synthetix and you're not staking it, but you're willing to trade, we can kind of get you in the flywheel by having you come in, earn a little bit of Synthetix, and then teaching you how to stake it. And I would really like to see inflation come down significantly. I think we got to a point where, inflation was out of control, well over 100%. And I just think we need to find a happy medium between hyperinflation and zero that still allows us to be flexible, still allows us to react to behavior we might want to see on the network and actually incentivize and stimulate various types of actions without completely wrecking the supply by inflating into oblivion. I think there just really has to be a happy medium here. So I'm really glad that we've seen inflation come down quite a bit recently. I would like to see it decrease even more significantly. As far as an exact number, well, right now I think that could be fairly low, right? Because we don't have much behavior other than staking that we're trying to incentivize. So I would say we're kind of headed in the right direction by just decreasing inflation significantly until we see some kind of impact on the staked percentage of SNX. If that's the behavior we're trying to encourage, then that's the behavior we should be focused on right now. But I think just in general, keeping even a few percent is just going to make us a lot more flexible to be able to deploy that in the future at a moment's notice without having to go restarting inflation once we realize that we want or need it. So that's where I stand. I would like to see it come down even more significantly, but definitely not to zero.
Great. Thank you, Burt. Afif, your response, please.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has been said. I think probably everybody agrees that the inflation should be much lower than where it is now, and like it's stepping down in that direction. I think we did the target staking ratio experiment, and I think overall the results were pretty underwhelming. We had much lower issuance before and still roughly the same staking participation if you exclude the new SNX that was issued during that period. So I think, yeah, we probably all agree that it should be much lower. And I would guess most of us, or maybe also all of us, agree that going straight to zero right now is not a very good idea, especially like for the stability of the protocol. Like we don't want mass exodus of stakers to kind of leave the protocol with low liquidity or potentially even destabilize the debt pool. So and I also agree with a lot of what's been said here. Like we have like a big migration coming up from V2 to V3, and we may want to have some inflation to incentivize certain things to expedite the migration process, or migration of synths from V2X synths to V3 synths, or incentivization of new collateral in V3. So like I think probably an optimal picture of inflation is to maybe like do what like a lot of projects typically do. I know like Synthetix has been historically pretty cavalier with monetary policy, and that's paid off in a lot of circumstances, but some not always. So it probably makes sense to set kind of like maybe a soft target for what the final hard cap will be, soft hard cap, but and then like an issuance schedule that gets us to there over several years. And that leaves us with, maybe an aggregate after the V3 migration, 1 to 2% as a budget for incentives. And I also think the escrow of inflation is maybe not as necessary. It kind of just introduces a lot of complexity to integrators and weird behavior among stakers. So I would also favor simplifying the escrow process a bit. It's maybe a bit tangential, but yeah, that's my take on inflation.
Great, thank you. TerraBellus, thoughts on inflation, please.
So, well, the question of whether we wind down inflation in the short term will be dependent upon Kane's presentation and how he's developed his draft. At present, I'm inclined to support winding down inflation simply because Synthetix has a long history of being pragmatic in its willingness to adapt to new circumstances. And given that we're currently in a bear market where yields are becoming increasingly difficult to come by, and Synthetix has built a product that is drawing revenue from through the protocol itself, it seems like a kind of circumstances that it might be worth experimenting with this. And remember, this is something that is only going to be an experiment as far as we're going to maintain the ability to act as governors to pursue the best interests of the protocol. And I think in the short term and medium term, the best interests of the protocol might be met by trying turning off inflation.
Thank you, Tara. Ethernaut, your thoughts on inflation, please.
Sure. It's hard to add something to what's already been said, but if I had to, I would say that that the fade out of inflation needs to be coordinated with the fade out of the biggest thing preventing this protocol from achieving PMF, which is front running. So I like the idea of inflation being used as a bootstrapping tool, and I think we can remove that tool as soon as we prove that we solved the main thing that holds the protocol back, which is front running. And I think that even though it may not feel like we're about to defeat this problem, I think I do feel like we are in the verge of defeating it. And I like the idea that we are discussing what it would be like without inflation. But I do agree that it needs to be a gradual thing as we demonstrate that the protocol generates fees, that it's not attackable by front running. And something I would like to add that I was thinking as I was hearing everyone else, is that even though if we had zero inflation, we would still be able to incentivize activity in the protocol via the generic rewards distribution mechanism that's being designed in V3. For example, I don't know, the Treasury Council could deposit some SNX in a bucket that would be distributed for incentives and that sort of thing. I'm not saying that it will be that way, but it's a possibility.
Thank you, Ethernaut. And finally, Adam, your thoughts on inflation, please.
Yeah, let's get controversial, I guess, because while I agree with everyone that the inflation right now needs to come down because we are fundamentally rewarding entirely wrong behaviors in so much idle SUSD, I think that one of the biggest mistakes we could make is taking the inflation down to zero entirely. It is just terrible monetary policy for us to put a hard cap in place because there is a natural rate of outchurn in any economic system of lost wallets, of dust fees, of things like that, of people who have moved on from it. And we are allowing ourselves to fall for a meme that is motivated by our personal holdings short term, rather than what is best long term for the health of this protocol and being able to properly stimulate the core economic cycle in a hands-off way. We should be building a system that we get inflation down. We make sure these rewards are going to things that provide for the long-term health of the protocol. and then we can lock ourselves out of it and have it in a reliable, predictable fashion, along with the natural rate of churn from the economic system. If we move beyond that, we will slowly bleed out the system that we have in favor of short-term returns. And it is one of the greatest challenges that I think every DeFi protocol is going to face. And I think Synthetix has the history of having inflation as part of the protocol, where we can justify that experimentation and not fall into the same trap as everyone who's being pushed by short-term bag holders.
Great. Thank you for that perspective, Adam. Moving on to question 4. This one will be open for the group. Many of the communities have noted protocols like GMX seemingly coming out of nowhere, while Synthetix has made relatively slow progress on iterations of its perpetual futures offerings. With that in mind, what can be done to improve the level of urgency and agility from the Spartan Council and greater Synthetix DAO? And what ideas do you have to incentivize trading sustainably to drive more parity with other perps protocols? Again, open for discussion.
I would like guys to open this discussion with one sentence, and let's say everything has a price, and the price for the speed of the other protocols is paid with the decentralization. So like the oracle that they use.
Yeah, I have to agree with Andrea, but more largely, I think the mistake that the community is making in this constant outcry about GMX is that if we're comparing ourselves to our competitors, then we've already lost the plot. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, do I believe that the market needs my unique value proposition? And if the answer is no, then we need to change what we're doing. Right now, GMX is a flashy new toy with higher rewards on a network that's more popular than the L2 that we're using. That's irrelevant. That's fine. They can do what they want, and I hope them a lot of success, because rising tides will lift all ships. But our mission is clear, and that's to make the most composable synthetic assets. And we're seeing it already used across Quenta and Lyra and things like that. But we need to focus on our tokenized assets and the access to our perps and atomic swaps into other protocols, rather than worrying about what other protocols are doing with their perpetuals, because there'll be hundreds of them, they'll move fast, they'll break things. We are focused on a mission that I firmly believe that the market needs, and I think anything else is a distraction.
I mean, I think inward looking is a road to go down that can have some negative consequences. There's always value in looking towards others and seeing if there's opportunities to improve and alter one's trajectory based on their successes. That said, GMX is very much a shiny new thing. It's kind of the project that is taking the shortcuts that allow it to move ahead, and it could very quickly hit a roadblock that, because SNX has paid so much attention to not interacting with particular assets that might bring it under regulatory oversight. SNX has maintained that ability to sidestep issues.
Yeah, I think there's no real easy way to reckon with the fact that these slightly more centralized protocols, they're doing very, very well, and they're very popular. And I think part of the reason is because, there is a happy medium between centralization and decentralization. Decentralization is not a binary. It's not a black and white thing. It's a process. And I think, it is kind of being shown that the market only values these kinds of permissionless decentralized systems so much. And we could, in fact, use a centralized Oracle system and probably start picking off some of their users relatively quickly. So that we're going to have to accept. If we want to move ahead with our mission to be the most permissionless, the most decentralized, the most resistant to censorship, we're going to have to accept the fact that, GMX is going to shine for a little while. GMX also didn't come out of nowhere. GMX has been building for a little while. I believe I was using GMX before we even had our perps product out. So to say it came out of nowhere is actually a little bit of a misleading idea. They've been out and been working, and their product has improved significantly. Same with DYDX. I mean, when I first started using DYDX, the liquidity was absolutely terrible. I thought it was completely useless. And the minute that token launched, they were able to use their token to incentivize liquidity and incentivize trading. And now it's actually a really great experience. Although I think DYDX is a great example of where it kind of goes too far, right? I think there's been a lot of kind of public backlash to DYDX. It's becoming very, very obvious that DYDX is really just a centralized exchange on chain, and that's fine. That's what they're going to do. But yeah, I think in general, we need to work harder at pushing out this idea that Synthetix is the most decentralized, the most permissionless, and the most censorship-resistant protocol. But I think we also need to make sure that we are kind of backing that up with the way that we do our governance. I think it's really easy to look at the way Synthetix governance is now, and honestly say that there actually are a very small number of people who can have an outsized influence on Synthetix governance and actually control what's happening in Synthetix in a way that looks a lot like a company or something that's very, very centralized. And these are some things that we're going to have to reckon with in our own governance process. I know TerraBellus has really been kind of pushing restructuring governance quite a bit with meta governance proposals and making sure that we don't have too many people in one specific region that are kind of a liability if regulators should come down. But yeah, I think that's really the thing that we need to do is we need to focus on making sure that if we're going to go ahead with this mission and say that Synthetix is going to be unstoppable and you're going to pay the premium and wait until our products are ready because we're going to fit with your DeFi ethos better than anybody else. We need to make sure to really push for that at all aspects of the organizational structure and our products.
Yeah, DYD docs was mentioned, so I got to jump back in and just say that decentralization doesn't matter until it does. And users will realize that and will push back at that. And we see it time and time again. Once somebody takes an action that they don't like, or once it's pointed out to them, sometimes quite aggressively and through memes and in public flame wars on Twitter, that this is a problem. And I think we're going through this phase right now where we've got a lot of operators in this space who came here from TradeFi and want to make money and don't give a fuck about these values and will push whatever product seems to move the quickest, even if it's a centralized database. And so that's the zeitgeist of this moment. That is something that people are being trained on. And then they hit the wall of that experience and they...
Uh-oh.
He left.
It's like a DYDX.
It looks like we lost.
Cut off.
Lost Adam.
Yeah, I just wanted to say actually I agree with Burt on that GMX didn't come out of nowhere. I think there's two things in this question. One is it seems like GMX came out of nowhere, but really it's that prior to recently they had these huge and complicated or these really restrictive parameters set to avoid front running, and there was not so much usage at the time. So that's I think actually this is something that makes me even more optimistic, is to see how fast a product like this can grow and how many people there are really demanding these features, and we're building something very similar at Quenta, and something that will even exceed some of the capabilities of GMX, and in some ways I think I'm I've been a little Afif pilled on perps v2, and think it's a bit unfair also to say that we're making really slow progress on the future offerings, just because a lot of this is being built in the background, has already been thought through, and our teams are working together. So I'm actually really optimistic for what's happening soon.
I would also like to add that against the question of what can the council do to improve this. And honestly, I think do everything in our power to shift to B3 as soon as possible. Basically, any implementation or any iteration on the protocol will be like 10x faster, because of the lower degree of complexity that the CCs will have to manage and the auditors will have to manage for any type of feature implementation. Something that's affected the speed of progress is the backwards compatibility and the technical debt that we're carrying with B2, because it's been used for so many experiments, right? And it's become this complex thing. So any small thing that we need to change is a lot of work from the CCs, a lot of work from auditors. And when we shift to B3, all that will practically go away. We understood how it needs to work, and we have a way to make it work in a simple way, simple and elegant way. And I also think that having one of the properties of B3 is that the tokens are pure ERC20s, fully compliant, which is not the case right now with SNX. I think that would also cause a lot of motion.
Great, thank you. If nobody has anything else, we can go ahead and move along to the next question. Kind of along the same lines, how is Synthetix fared relative to competition? And what is your understanding of a good faith timeline for system upgrades and roadmap improvements as of now? Again, this one's open for discussion.
I guess I'll go ahead and chime in on the last one. I think like there's what some people perceive as competition, and then there's what is actually competition. When I look at other like protocols with perps markets, let's say, they're all, mostly competing for users, and they talk about composability just in the context of people building different trading front ends, and they're mostly going for that thing. And as such, some of them make different trade-offs, like running centralized fast oracles that we would never make. So like I think there probably aren't too many protocols out there who have like the same exact mission as Synthetix in terms of like synthetic asset protocols. I don't think there's another one that was able to achieve the same level of liquidity for synths. Yeah, I honestly can't think of one. I mean, at peak, ETH liquidity on Curve was huge, right? And then every synth was as liquid as SETH, through what the debt pool can provide. So I would say Synthetix has done pretty well relative to whatever competition there might be. I think it's kind of a unique mission, roadmap, use case, whatever you want to say, where composability and as Adam mentioned earlier, getting other protocols to plug in is prioritized. And I think we're only going to really lean more into that with the architecture that we'll have in V3. So timelines, yeah, the second part of the question, timelines are always, especially when you're building, things that tend to be more novel. Like from my own background, doing research, like you almost never know how long it's really take. You can give a rough estimate, but if it's something that hasn't been done before, you can only really kind of, unless it's like very, very clear what's going to be done, you don't know. Like Perps V2, while I'm incredibly bullish on it now, a lot of research went into it and a lot of iteration until we settled on the right model. And it's, I think, different from any other Perps AMM in the space. And you just can't time, how quickly that's going to happen, So we can try to give timelines, no matter what they are. People are always mad, and for one reason or another. But like I think in general, like I've been pretty happy with some of the projections recently. Like I think it seemed like a lot of things have been shipped. Like direct integrations are coming soon. We made a bunch of changes to atomic swaps. Debt migration is code complete. Like a lot of things have been done in a pretty timely manner, especially V3. I'm really happy with how quickly V3 has been coming along. So I don't know if that totally answered the question completely, but those are all my thoughts on it.
I have to tell you, Afif, congrats. You kept every point, I think, the question. And the only thing that I want to add is, as you saw, as you say a bit, I mean, what's competitor? Synthetix is like to don't have competitors, and it's also the more complex protocol in the DeFi space, and this is also because Synthetix want to do not only but also what the competitors are trying to do or are doing, but in Synthetix want to do it in a total trustless and decentralized way. So this, of course, make Synthetix lower logically. Few people understand this, and we're still in a early stage of the DeFi space of this world, let's say. So I'm confident about the road that Synthetix have in front, and yeah, that.
So I would quickly add that on the question of GMX in general, that GMX as well as DYDX compete not necessarily in our space. We definitely overlap. Our value proposition is that we are permissionless and composable. That's very important, and that's on the roadmap, and it will be strengthened in V3. I think the simplicity wins. The new kid on the block also helps them gain traction. Let's see how far they can push. They'll definitely be competing with DYDX V4, which is under development. I think that our proposition of not necessarily targeting the high frequency retail traders, but being composable and allowing for contract interactions, it goes a long way, long term. That's all.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm pretty optimistic on what we can build compared to even like GMX and some of these people, and like, you know, like calling them our competitors is one thing, because in like to like a retail trader, like they really are, and like what's, I guess, like interesting to bring that up here is like that's more actually like a battle that I think is not fought by Synthetix itself, but actually in like building this kind of like ecosystem of projects that can go and start to do this themselves. So like in our case, like Quenta can incentivize trading and do referral programs or any of the kind of things that like GMX did to see this like massive growth. And so like and like on top of that, like I think like we're coordinating even better, I think now, like from Quenta with Synthetix's team and like the engineers, and like seeing the progress. And so like there's just like a lot that's been learned, I think, even recently in the last like 6 months or so on how to do this and how to coordinate the launch. And like that's actually something I'm like especially interested in doing, is like ensuring that when we do have something like Perps V2, like Synthetix doesn't just like, you know, drop these contracts on Etherscan and nobody can use them. Like we want to enable people to be able to use them, and then incentivize them to do so. So like I think a lot has been considered there as well.
I think people might easily forget the scale of what Synthetix has done in building an ecosystem. While you can look at GMX and see coin price, Synthetix has not only built itself a kind of vibrant ecosystem, it's also supported the development of others' projects. And while there are quite a bunch, or many of them are at least, I know that Synthetix has built a very robust team of developers that work behind the scenes to ensure this is a really strong, safe, and innovative protocol that I think, with its robust treasury, is going to have every success in the future.
Yeah, I would echo just what a lot of others have been saying, that the competition is not a problem, but I think we make the mistake of framing this entire question from a technical lens. If we want to be the broad standard framework that others use, this tokenized and composable set of Synthetix, then it isn't about the milestone in which we've built and deployed these contracts. It's the years after it that take to build the liquidity and the partnerships and the integrations. And that's what we've already seen with SUSD. It took us years to be where we're at right now, when everybody thought this would be a short journey, and we're still not satisfied with the liquidity and adoption we have. So I think it's important for us to know the length of that time horizon and what we need to prioritize. And I think a lot of that is going to come down to understanding that we are that framework product and how we start to build it out in a way that doesn't make us focused on that end consumer, whether that's D3M style modules for other protocols to better access liquidity or things like that, by focusing on those partnerships and the ways that we can integrate with others and really leverage that unique value proposition that Synthetix has. We eliminate the conversation about the competition right now because they're focused on something entirely different.
All right. If there's nothing else, we can go ahead and move on to the next question. Question 6, also open for discussion. Do you think V3 will help accelerate more adoption of the Synthetix protocol? And what features of V3 do you think will be most effective in doing so?
Absolutely. I mean, it will allow risk-adjusted participation in the ecosystem. Yeah, those who wish to hold SNX and reap the rewards that will be granted to those people, or those who wish to kind of come in with other assets such as ETH, which I believe we may support, and participate in that manner.
Yeah, I think it has the potential to drive adoption. I don't think it does it in isolation just by existing. And I do have a significant concern about the view of having it publish a different asset. I worry about losing out on the integrations and partnerships that we have already with SUSD and the time that it takes to build those again, educate users on a new asset, go through governance process and different protocols. And so I'm wary of that actually being something that could set back the overall adoption here and the overall volume usage in the ecosystem.
As far as I'm aware, it's SUSD becoming SNXUSD. I'm not quite sure if I follow where the necessity for where that difference is emerging. Sorry, Adam.
That's okay. My understanding is that as we go through this migration process, the two systems will be issuing different assets, and that was a discussion we were having the other day in the fundamentals, but perhaps that's something that the V3 team needs to provide a little bit better detail and clarity on, or maybe that was just my misunderstanding as well. But I think we want to make sure that we are making sure that we're still using the same asset and not losing out on those integrations.
I would only add that I definitely agree with the risk-adjusted participation and that pools that potentially opens up the protocol to new market participants, maybe even institutions at some point, once clarity from regulations and the regulatory agencies comes through. I would also add that the simplified structure of smart contracts makes it more it makes it easier for developers to integrate and build up on top of Synthetix, and that will have a longer-term implications for the success of V3.
I will say one thing that some of the folks working on V3 were particularly bullish on with the design is while it won't be possible out of the box, it's what the protocol is iterating towards, is kind of making it possible to utilize this, credit-based derivatives liquidity model and to make it more generalizable, which will basically allow, I think kind of like the spirit of DeFi is, decentralization and all that, but it's also just like permissionless experimentation. And kind of what, down the road, not so far down the road, but it's one of the goals of V3 is to basically have, permissionless market creation, right? And so I'm not saying synth because a synth is just one thing, but basically we have this new primitive called markets that can have, any arbitrary set of logic, and you can put whatever you want into that logic and create whatever kind of instrument you want. And then it's really easy to tack on stakers on the other side who just kind of underwrite that market, and they take on, whatever debt inflation or deflation adjustments to their debt, if you might say. Like if the market is net printing more SUSD than it's taking in, it just assigns it to other people. It simplifies a lot of the accounting more so than you would have in like an AMM or something. So it can allow for much more rapid iteration through different financial instrument designs. So that's like one thing that I think is particularly bullish. And like goes without saying, the answer to the first part of the question is yes. And I think this in the long term will be one of the more interesting things. In the short term, there's a lot of other catalysts. I think like if you like one simple product is ETH staking to like an ETH perps market. That's a very simple product. Things like delta neutral derivative backed stablecoin issuance, that'll be a very interesting, useful product. Oh, I hope people can still hear me. My headphone batteries just died. But yeah, so I think I listed some of the features that I think will be particularly bullish. But long term, I think the experimentation aspect of it is particularly exciting to some of us.
I'm also excited about how it will be much easier to integrate Synthetix with other protocols. Like right now with V2X, I've heard this from other devs. It's kind of it kind of works differently. It's, as I said before, it's not fully RC20 compliant. So I'm excited to see like other people wanting to integrate with us, and it's actually easy. It's actually easy to understand our contracts and interact with the protocol.
And I'll just add in for anybody who's not following the chat, there is the difference with the SUSD and SNX USD. We just clarified that in the chat.
Great, and a couple notes from Ksett, who is having mic troubles. On GMX and competitors, Ksett says decentralization had a price, and we're going to have competition. We should focus on being truly decentralized and resume V3GM. Enabling cross-chain functionalities can go a long way to establishing dominance. Scaling SUSD has been a big issue that will hopefully be solved with the V3 push. And the Spartan Council can help streamline by making changes to parameters, an easier process for CCs, possibly through some form of delegation. Does anyone have anything else to add on this question? All right, moving on to question 7. This will be for individual response. What are your thoughts on the best ways to scale SUSD? Ksett, I guess Ksett gave her response. So Adam, your thoughts on scaling SUSD?
I think the biggest thing that we have to do to scale SUSD is stop thinking of ourselves as a product and start thinking of ourselves as a standard. We focus a lot on the end user product and on retail when we should be building for the more industrial and commercial scale, the B2B integrations across DAOs, like MakerDAO's D3M module into Aave, allowing them to mint directly into pools and things like that. I want to see us really focus more deeply on building the tools that others need to build on top of us, right? We don't see a lot of usage in not only SUSD, but especially the other synths. They are a great product. As we move to V3 and have the compliant ERC20 versions of assets, that's going to be helpful. But I think that just the biggest framing is making ourselves accessible to other protocols and let them drive forward. Because we've seen already with things like Quenta that when we empower other protocols, there's this multiplicative effect that benefits this community. And I think we need to double and triple down on that.
Thank you, Adam. Burt, your response to this question.
Yeah, I think scaling SUSD very simply is just going to require taking in a lot of ETH collateral. And I think the design of V3 is going to make that a lot easier versus the design we currently have, which kind of makes it this this fight over how much to leverage the debt pool with wrappers. So I'm very excited to see this move forward. But I think I think expanding the supply of SUSD is just very simply one of the most powerful things we can do. It's necessary yesterday, and I'm very excited to see us start taking on some more collateral so we can expand that supply. It's just really hard to onboard any traders, much less very large traders, otherwise, right? We have a zero slippage model, but we don't actually have a zero slippage model because you need to eat the slippage when you're entering and exiting. So yeah, I think that one is fairly simple.
Thank you, Burt. Andrea?
Here, so I have to agree with Adam for the B2B, the business to business opportunity that we have, and let's say we create we let create to the other DApp, to the other protocols, a better user experience in the DeFi space, and this is priceless. Of course, in order to do that, S2SD have to scale more and more, and let's say we have this first level of scalability for S2SD that is the liquidity on the market. And so, in order to solve it, we need a large amount of SUSD available on the market, and yeah, so how to do it is having more SUSD in circulation by minting them. So ergo, we go back to the multi-collateral discussion. So having this multi-collateral, I think, will be the best way in order to scale SUSD. And yeah, that's it. Having a better market, no slippage, it's done. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. TerraBellus, your thoughts on the best ways to scale SUSD?
I mean, one of the aspects that plays a role in SUSD remaining off peg is the fact that the system inclines people towards not putting their SUSD on markets. And one manner of kind of tackling this will be building out the system. And as we grow in scale, that risk aversion that holders of SUSD have, that is a product of the minting and burning process, will diminish. And so it's one of those things that, while there are many things that we can do, focus on loans, for example, short-term solutions such as wrappers, I think it's going to be something that will improve as we scale the protocol outwards.
Thank you, Tara. Troy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, a lot with what Burt said. Like expanding the supply seems like the most obvious, the most obvious thing to do right now. And I believe like, yeah, V3 and allowing like non-SNX collateral would do a lot in that way. There's just like there's some other things to do as well. Like there's once people have SUSD, they need to like do something with it. And some of these things can actually improve this as well. So like even in the like near future, Quinto will launch this like cross margin product, which will actually sort of just like take in and be like a little sink of SUSD. Like sometimes this stuff I think in the past has contributed to some of the liquidity issues, right? Like there's just a bunch of SUSD sitting in one place, not moving, but the peg is off, and like those people could arb that away. Quinta actually works to kind of like almost like like multiply the capability of that SUSD that is sitting there. So instead of just having this like, I don't know, $500,000 sitting there doing nothing, like really the debt pool can take on these sort of like outsized positions on some notional amount of SUSDs. So like I think in some ways some of the things like ecosystem projects are doing to like offer leverage and capital efficiency will help, as well as expanding the supply.
Thank you, Troy. Afif, your thoughts?
Yeah, so lots has been said so far. If you want to kind of,
deep dive on the mechanism, you kind of have to do like a sampling of, you know, what has been tried in the space and what has been effective and what hasn't. A lot of approaches where they end up falling short is that, as TerraBellus said, somebody has to be willing to sell it, right? Not necessarily just dumping it, but if somebody's going to LP it, you know, right, you need a two-sided market. So somebody has to be willing to sell it, right? And usually the way that you can get people to be willing to buy and sell it is with a smooth redemption mechanism, which we don't really have right now. Probably one of the most successful peg management tools that we've used was the ETH wrapper, because we basically had this massive pile of ETH that could issue SETH, right? And then that SETH could be freely converted to SUSD and then used to arb the SUSD peg. And then you had this massive pool of ETH where you could redeem synths for ETH if synths were trading below peg. And we actually saw all of the ETH in the wrapper redeemed in some of the turbulence earlier this year. But like, without going down too long of a tangent, like we found that it wasn't really a scalable way to manage risk with the ETH wrapper. But yeah, I'm not particularly bullish on things like loans or basically any like credit-based tools to manage, you know, stability of the peg. I mean, like ultimately, like also as Burt said, like we have people who want to be able to acquire, go in and out of SUSD very cheaply, right? And so if we're not going to kind of make this sacrifice of introducing centralized collateral, then kind of like ETH is probably our best option. And I think using some of the other mechanisms we've explored, like SIP 256, which I won't go into too much detail here, are probably our best hope. And then like in V3, ways to compartmentalize certain risks, you know, certain markets that are designed to strengthen the peg, you know, either through the ETH wrapper or through SIP 256 like mechanism, and then other markets that are primarily for providing liquidity. So yeah, if you can build confidence in the stability of the peg, you know, through wrappers and other mechanisms, then you can keep the liquidity strong. So I guess, yeah, that'd be my answer.
Great, thank you. Darius, your thoughts on the best way to scale SUSD?
So let's see. So SUSD is one of our products that features stability in the peg. So one way is to increase stability, the peg defense, and then lowering volatility, which is accomplished with deeper liquidity and better mechanisms to defend the peg, including liquidations. More supplies would definitely help. That comes from new collateral, as was discussed before. Demand for the product would come from deeper integrations within other DeFi protocols. And as far as supply is concerned, higher SNX price would also enable more issuance. That's all.
Thank you, Darius. Ethernaut.
Yeah, other than what's already been mentioned, I think that things that would help scalability would be obviously decentralization. So I agree that B3GM needs to be completed. It's going to be a key factor in the upcoming arena, let's say. And another thing is like what makes DeFi so interesting, and I think that it's composability. So I think that we need to achieve an SUSD or SNXUSD that is more composable, that you can add into atomic transactions, flash loans, or whatever to any other DeFi components, and it just plays along.
Thank you, Ethernaut. And finally, Bojan, thoughts on scaling SUSD?
Yeah, I think Afif already covered almost everything I wanted to say. So basically, risk-bearing ETH collateral, like exogenous collateral, I think is the best way probably to scale without additional leverage. But in the meantime, we can use to some extent like ETH loans or delta neutral issues. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Bojan. Moving on to question 8. This one is open for discussion. Many of you actually already kind of touched on a response here in the previous GMX question, but maybe we just want to go through and give a quick yes or no. But the question is, one thing that has been cited as a reason for higher volumes on certain platforms like GMX is they used fast centralized oracles, which can allow for lower fees. How do you feel about running a centralized oracle, and would you be open to the idea at Synthetix if it meant higher fees, revenue, and volume?
No, just no. We're not BYD docs. We're not finance and every other centralized party. Just no.
Next.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty consistent in my voting on SIPs and CCPs, and as far as I've opposed or fought against opportunities that were raised to add centralized aspects to the protocol.
Yeah, I think like something here is we're saying like GMX has higher volume because they have a fast centralized oracle. Like I actually think the fast part is the one that drives so many people to use it, and the ability for them to use to offer lower fees is because their oracle updates really quickly, like not because it's centralized. Like obviously, like I'm with everybody in saying like I don't think that's the right solution, but like to put a little more like detail or color on it, we accomplish a fast oracle without having it be centralized. And like if we could do that, then that feels like a solution that I think like a lot more people here, including myself, would support, and would frankly like solve a lot of these same problems and handle this kind of like competition that we're seeing.
Just a little point, maybe there is someone that don't know very well the risk behind that, but having a centralized oracle is equal to having a single point of failure, and I mean this is so risky. So yeah.
Yeah, and failure is not
Right.
just failure; it's also manipulation.
I would quickly add that introducing a centralized oracle would cause us to lose differentiation. And then once platforms have centralized oracles, they compete on fees, not necessarily our end game. So we want to differentiate with them, and we want to retain decentralized and resiliency, decentralization and resiliency of our platform.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for the responses. Seems to be consensus at no. Next question, also open for discussion. Would you support a SIP to decentralize staking front ends? And if yes, what sort of structure do you imagine for such an arrangement?
I have no problem with ones that, incentivize a kickback on something like trading or maybe, staking rewards so that we have integrations into other wallet tools and things like DeFi Saver. But I wouldn't advocate for just decentralizing the one we have and sending people elsewhere. I worry too much about front-end attacks. If over time somebody starts to look at a site as a reliable, trusted source for accessing SNX and the front end changes. So I think it would have to be IFPS kind of based, and then somebody's not going to check that hash every time. So I'm very skeptical of that, but I would be behind some generic function that allows kickback for integrators, and then that community can kind of build out itself at its own pace.
Yeah, this is something we recently did at Quinta, like moving our front end to be hosted on IPFS, and like there's a lot of benefits to it, like but it does come with a bit more complexity. So like I'd be interested in the best way to actually like accomplish this. I tend to agree, like having something that you own and which is your own kind of URL is really valuable. Like probably the most worrisome thing to me is like sending people to a different URL or something that's unfamiliar, and kind of like Adam said, like the limited upside of like does anybody actually care? It's like it's good for resiliency and kind of like protection for the project, but in general I actually just think having maybe like multiple supported staking front ends, or having an option to have it or use a decentralized one is probably enough to handle the kind of like resiliency side of this, because there's a lot more complexity in like then who actually graces the new decentralized front end as like the one. Well, now you have to have people sort of like constantly signing or voting or checking on these things, and they're probably not the people who built or tested them in the first place. So it can just like introduce a lot of complexity there.
I think I would definitely support decentralization in this, and I think that the way it should be achieved is to have like an open source code, right, and an official domain that it's just a deployment of this source code, and anyone can just deploy it, and anyone can verify that it hasn't been modified compared to like the official source code, right? It can be kept in the official domain, but if there's any regulatory issues or whatever, it can easily be deployed anywhere. So that's the way I think it needs to be done.
I think open sourcing front end is a pretty big step for decentralization, so I would definitely support that, but it's definitely not without its problems, and I think still having an officially hosted one if possible, but open sourcing would probably be an ideal path.
I think also a nice solution is front end running on local application, and something very nice can be also something like having this package that is updated by everyone, and everyone can also download it and run the front end locally in his computer. Of course, it's not really user friendly, but in case of regulation and something happen, can be nice.
All right. If nobody has anything else, we can move on to the next question. Question 10 is for individual response. Which of the projects that are integrated with Synthetix excites you the most, and why? And to take it just a little bit further, what's your vision for Synthetix on this project, and how do you propose we get there? We will hear from Ksett first on this one.
Mine is Lyra, obviously. But
surprise, surprise.
Shocking. No, but I think that like the biggest thing about Synthetix that's so cool is the composability, and I'm also really excited for Adam's distribution of composability between Lyra and Polynomial, and any other protocols launching on top is just a really great use case.
You cut out in the middle there.
Oh,
I think she was referencing Amphora, Adam's project.
Oh yeah, I was talking about Amphora, and what I'm most excited about is really the composability of all of these protocols to see how Synthetix composes with Lyra, Amphora, places like Polynomial that can all sort of build with and on top of each other.
Great, thank you, Ksett. Burt.
Yeah, I think nobody's going to be surprised to hear that I'm going to say Quenta, but there's a really good reason for this, and I think that's kind of been proven in the last few weeks when we've seen there's a lot of back and forth about how to dial in atomic swaps and how profitable this L1 volume really is. And yes, I am against toxic flow. But I think what we've seen is that the kind of simple, straightforward perps product that people generally understand and has good demand out in the market is one that can be incredibly profitable for stakers. And it can also be something that's really flexible, right? There have been all kinds of ideas floated around about doing something like backing an options contract with a perps contract, and so it's an incredibly flexible product that can be plugged into all sorts of different interesting payout structures, but is also just on its own proven to be extremely profitable. And I think this is probably one of the best ways that Synthetix stakers can be profitable too, is to make sure that we focus on having the best perps product and incentivizing trading. I know I've kind of said that before, that I think incentivizing trading is a really powerful thing. From the Quenta side, we're definitely going to be incentivizing trading. We want people to come use this product because when people use the product, they will frankly lose money, and synthetic stakers will make money. And so I think that's what excites me. Just very straightforward. Most profitable thing we can be doing is to give people leverage and tell them to use it.
Great. Thank you, Burt. Andrea?
Yeah, okay. Without a doubt, the DEX aggregator that I've implemented, the token swap in the code. As I told before, this stuff like 1inch and the DEX aggregator give a great service to their users, and this is a big importance. And this B2B, having this B2B product that can create a better UX in the DeFi space is priceless, and especially if it then support also the user by being decentralized and trustless.
Thank you, Andrea. Bojan?
Yeah, well, I'm excited about all projects, protocols building on top of Synthetix. I see Synthetix as a foundation, like core stuff, and like more exotic stuff built on top of it. Yeah, I think example of Lyra and then polynomial built on top is really cool. Yeah, I would like to see like even more vertical integration or some combination of polynomial and Quenta products and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think V3 architecture will tremendously help us get there and to get even more interesting products.
All right. Thank you, Bojan. Tara, your response to this question, please.
So I'm very much Synthetix first, and that means that through being on the Spartan Council or working heavily in forwarding SIPs over the last 9 months, I'm really kind of approaching the projects from an analytical point of view, and that's how I'm kind of integrating with them. In terms of which excites me, I suppose it would be the next one, because it implies that the ecosystem is growing. If we keep having next integrations, it's a fantastic sign that we're growing and developing, improving, and expanding. So as long as there's a next one, I'm very happy and excited to be involved.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tara. Troy, your response, please. Did we lose Troy? All right, Afif, your response to this question. We'll come back to Troy.
Yeah, I basically the same thing Bojan said. I think the one that is coolest to me is maybe not the coolest, but the most interesting use case is polynomial, because it's plugging into Lyra, which is plugging into Synthetix, and some of their vaults plug into Lyra and Synthetix. And I think yeah, just like these arbitrarily complex Lego structures are pretty neat, and that's what it's all about to me, right? Just letting people permissionlessly experiment and build all this weird crap, 1 and 1,000th of which will probably be cool. But that's all it really takes, is one thing that's unique and different enough that gets people really, really excited about it. And I think, yeah, V3 is only going to supercharge that, the surface for experimentation. So that's kind of where I see it going in the future.
Great. Thank you, Afif. And we have Troy back. So, Troy, your response to this question, please.
Hey, yeah, sorry, I got disconnected during maybe the easiest softball you could have thrown me, which is that Quenta is my favorite project of the ecosystem projects. I think it's but again, like I think to agree with some of the other points here, like the composability really is the kind of like killer app here. Like the ability to do something like this like speculation using something like Quenta, but then to also create some of these like really kind of more like safer or like less risky structured products is really like what Synthetix is here to do, like support everything along that spectrum. So like yes, I hope degens like come to Quenta and like you use what we have to offer, and the same for others. And I hope either Quenta or others can help build products that combine things and come up with novel structures that, like, I don't think anyone on this call is going to come up with every single thing that could be done here. And really, I think that's the main benefit.
Thank you, Troy. Ethernaut.
Yeah, I think we're all aligned. I think no particular integration, but the ability to integrate with everything and in a decentralized way with no sacrifices. That's what we've been trying to achieve. And B3 is going to make it much easier. It's also going to be a foundation for anyone to come in and build any kind of market that we cannot imagine at the moment. So yeah, a foundation and a DeFi Lego that fits into anything.
All right, thank you, Ethernaut. Darius, your response?
So my response, I really like Quenta with perps. I like the innovation in Lyra, but the most exciting integration is the integration with Dex's, Curve, and 1inch, simply because being a bit more practical, it generates revenues and gives us a longer roadmap for experimenting with composability ideas going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. And finally, Adam.
So I won't shill Amphora because Ksett already did that for me. And while I really like Quenta because it will destroy DYDX one day, I'm actually going to pick more of a partner that I think is of value is Fixed Forex and the pools that they've helped to pair up with and incentivize on Curve for our foreign exchange. I think this tokenized angle is so underplayed and something that really excites me, and in being able to bring Synthetix onto chains in ways where we can stake liquidity and use them as collateral and other protocols in a way that users are familiar with. It's something that no one else is doing, and it taps into some of the largest markets in the world, like the Forex trade. And so I think if we can really unlock that, we can make a very significant change in kind of where liquidity sits and be the ones to power it.
Great. Thank you, Adam. And thank you, everybody. We've reached the end of the questions, and now it's time to hear closing remarks, elevator pitches from each candidate. Troy, we'll hear from you first. Closing remarks, please.
Yeah, to close, I'd just like to thank you for organizing this. Like, I think
thank you.
after hearing everybody speak, this is just like we have just like such a good kind of like pool of candidates that I can't imagine how hard it must be for people to decide. But anyways, like for me, like, I'm here to build. So like I'm here to pay attention and build and like use Synthetix and continue to grow it. I think, I've done that in some way by contributing at Quenta, but like I'd love to do even more by participating in governance and helping improve coordination between sort of like Quenta and the Synthetix team, and also just kind of like have take closer looks at some of these like risk parameters and things that we can do to help kind of grow the protocol, and then finally kind of incentivize this growth. Like Quenta really is looking to be kind of the front door to get into using Synthetix products, and so we have kind of a huge undertaking in both handling kind of like spot synths for hedging, as well as offering this perps product. So I'm super excited to help get that out and get it into more people's hands and grow it. And hopefully next time we do this, we won't have to talk about GMX so much. But yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Troy. There were community questions. It's what the community wanted to hear. Darius, closing statements, elevator pitch from you, please.
I'll make it quick. So I decided to get more involved with the SNX and nominate myself to the Synthetix Council. My background lends itself very relevant. I'm technical, express my thoughts and views on Synthetix and the ecosystem on this call. I'm really happy and excited to continue to get more technical and build with other CCs, especially on the protocol risk side, which is my expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. Ksett, closing statement, please.
I would just say, like, it's a really great field. It's been awesome being on Spartan Council and having an input into these things and getting across V3. I'm really excited for the V3 launch.
Thank you, Ksett. Andrea.
Hey, first of all, thanks Professor Cake and SNXweave for hosting that. And what I can say, you have seen that in my world there is much passion for Synthetix. As I told, I nominate Synthetix Italia with the idea to create a sub-DAO as experiment scale the Synthetix DAO, and I want to bring to light an important factor of the Synthetix Italia initiative, and is if we get the role, the salary of 2K SNX per month will not be pocketed by me or by other participants in Synthetix Italia. Instead, it will be used for the community activities and to cover expenses or grants, something like that. So only for benefit Synthetix itself. Let's try this sub-DAO if we will be able to keep the rule. And nothing. It was a pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Afif, your closing statement, please.
Yeah, thanks again for hosting. It was a lot of fun as usual. I'm glad we had this big pool of candidates, like for this epic in particular, because it's a really important one. I think it's a lot of decisions are going to be made about the transition, from V2X to V3 and the direction of the protocol. And so a lot of that is going to be decided in the next few months and actually, be implemented. Big changes are going to be happening. And so, yeah, so I guess my own elevator pitch would just be it's good to be cognizant of all the risks and make sure we get these transitions done in the smoothest way possible and protect, the safety of the protocol. And that's kind of why I wanted to be part of the Spartan Council through this whole process, these last several terms. And I guess that I'll just end it there. That's my pitch.
Great. Thank you. TerraBellus, your closing statements, please.
Well, I know that SNX and Synthetix are poised to release many improvements that I think will have a big positive impact on the functioning of the protocol. So we have a really strong, robust team that are guarding the interests of the stakers and also other community members and ecosystem partners. And I'm excited to play a role should the community give me the opportunity going forward in helping manage and bring that future about. Thank you for everyone for attending tonight and participating in governance.
Thank you, Tara. Burt, closing statements, please.
Yeah, so last epoch, I had the advantage of being up here, not having any history. So my closing statements, it was impossible to evaluate what level of bullshit I was feeding you at the time. This time, I don't have that advantage. So I think in closing, I'd like to say, just kind of evaluate whether or not you think somebody who is focused on the trading experience and connecting the community is a valuable asset to the council. I won't pretend to be the smartest person up here or the most familiar with the nuts and bolts of how these contracts work or anything like that. I've had to defer to a lot of much smarter people about a lot of things over this last epoch, but I think I felt really good about some of the things that we've managed to get done. I like that we've put a little more focus than I feel like would have otherwise been done on new asset listings, making sure that protocol parameters that affect traders, like the skew scale and funding rates that people are paying, are kind of kept in check and kept reasonable. And so I would like to continue that goal as we move into hopefully Perps V2 and really start expanding the product. And I will do my absolute best to really follow along and try to understand everything that's going on. I hope that I've proven that some of the concerns early on that maybe we would have some kind of infighting about who was representing what interests. Those didn't really play out, right? We've worked really well together as Spartan Council, I feel like, over the past few months, and I'm grateful that we've all gotten along and really prioritized making sure that these products are the best they can be without undue risk to synthetic stakers. So appreciate everybody's time today, and thanks for hosting.
Absolutely, thank you, Burt. Ethernaut, closing statements, please.
Yeah, this moderation thing is really great. So yeah, I think my biggest contribution to this protocol from a programming perspective has already been done. Basically, I spent some time learning what are the difficult things of the implementation, and then designing a system that doesn't have them, right? And I think that has been done. And I am seeing now a new generation of CCs building on top of that and moving at speeds that I can't even comprehend. Like, I have to make humongous amounts of efforts to understand what they're doing because it's incredible. So I think I can step back a little bit right now as a programmer per se, and just make sure that all this talent and all this work and all this effort culminates in the shipping of V3.
Thank you, Ethernaut. Adam, closing statement, elevator pitch, please.
So I'm going to do something unorthodox for me and try and keep this short and simple if I can. There are two core reasons out of all the things I've said as to why you should vote for me. I'm going to push for absolute transparency on every single decision I make and I'm a part of, because it's a DAO and you deserve to know every little detail. Second, I'm always going to advocate for decisions that are good for long-term policy for the protocol. Not what users want, not what's short-term profitable, whatever makes us healthiest in the long run. If that's not what you want, that's okay. Don't vote for me. But if you think that's a fit and that's what we need more of, vote for me. And I will do my best to make sure that we pull through with that every single step of the way.
Thank you, Adam. And last but not least, rounding out the evening, Bojan, elevator pitch / closing statement, please.
Yeah, I would like to finish with a message to my fellow Spartans. Stay safe, don't get liquidated, survive the storm, because as the saying goes, sun always comes after the storm. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Bojan. Thank everybody for being here tonight, and to all the participants, thank you for your insightful comments. For anybody who couldn't make this call, we're going to be uploading the recording on our podcast so that everyone has a chance to listen before the voting period closes Thank you everyone again for being here, and good luck, Spartans.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.